Previously in X-Men, Storm and the X-Men have defeated Emma Frost and the Hellfire Club again in a body-swapping two-part story. And with a moment of reprieve, Chris Claremont and company give us a unique issue that is maybe a little bit too odd to describe. I am Jason Lapidus of Group of Seven Comics. My compatriot Chris Sanigan is away on vacation. Great, and hope you're enjoying it, buddy. And I'm really excited to include my good friend Graydon James here tonight as we continue our never-ending Tuesday night live stream read-through of the X-Men comics that made it a classic, as we read Uncanny X-Men 153 or Classic X-Men 57, I think. Cover date, it still says 1981, but last time it was 1981 as well. So I don't know how that happened.
Right.
It's both 1981. But we're moving on.
According to my calculations, is a January issue.
Yeah, all I have to do is look at the cover, and it should say, it's
a lot of work.
Reading it in this amazing edition where it's all of the like all the photos are printed, the photo stats are printed before they go to the printer to print comics. They take a really high definition photograph, and that's what ends up going to the printers, which then gets like dulled down through that process. So these pages are sharper than what ends up being in one's newsstand issue, and it does say January, so it would be January 1982. So there you go, you wise guy. Fantastic. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you. And how are you?
I'm great, thanks as always. Right. I run really even, as you know, and things are always luckily pretty darn good.
I think we're simpatico that way. We're both even keel fellers. Just nothing's exciting, but nothing's terrible either.
True. I find that just the interactions are the exciting part. Like, I'm excited that you're there and that I'm here and that we're doing this together is exciting for me. But like life and all that stuff, it's pretty even keel. So it's good. Like it's another day, all good. And how are you reading it today? Because I don't think you have this issue in print.
I only have, honestly, I have all the issues on. Somebody was generous enough to give me a copy of the DVD, like scans, I guess, of like X-Men, Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, Hulk, Spider-Man from like 1960s to mid 2000s.
Yeah, so you're the richest guy in the world.
All of those, and I've read like a solid chunk of the Spider-Mans because that is my guy. I love Spider-Man stuff. I have tons of Spider-Man comics in my basement. And I haven't read much of the other. I've actually read some of the other X-Men's because you guys have, when I've watched the show, and then sometimes I'll read ahead a few issues, and then I don't have to watch the show for a couple weeks.
It's a good strategy. I wish I could do the same thing. On the box of those DVD-ROMs, it says on it, like, you can print your own printable comics. Right. So I've always been sort of tempted to find a reasonable source of paper that like somewhat matches, and then maybe, print off a couple of these fun issues and staple them properly and trim them down on the paper cutter, which is right there. You can see the handle. It's my grandfather's paper cutter. When you do the chop, it sounds like someone's dying. It's pretty deadly stuff. But I have yet to print off more than a page or two of Avengers #4, which is like the old Jack Kirby issue when Captain America comes back. But it's such a cool resource to have these things on DVD-ROM. You're going to have them as PDFs, and there's like there's a resurgence in it because A, those things are no longer made, and B, they are, like you said, they're scans of the original issues. Whereas if you were to subscribe to, Marvel Unlimited or any other kind of service where you can read comics online, they are all digital versions of the art as opposed to scans of the original art. So the white is pure white, the black is dead black, and the colors are hyper saturated. Not taking into account the printing process, which is what, of course, all these artisans did back in the day. They were expecting things to be grainy, to use a film parlance, right? They were expecting it, and which makes me think. So you are a musician. You're a professional musician.
True.
And I was listening to some David Bowie today as I was taking my dog for a walk, and listening in my AirPods here to something on Apple Music. And I was like, it's not supposed to sound like this. Like, the technology of the day is
Right.
so clear for a certain kind of representation of sound, but definitely not how David Bowie intended it to be sounding, or the engineers that put all that time in. Like, they were expecting it on analog.
Yeah.
Um, so go with this.
I
What
think,
what do you
well,
what do you think about all
I,
that
I think
and
there are
music?
very interesting choices that need to be made when you're dealing with a lot of analog technology as they were at this time in comics. And the notion that you're drawing and you're like, well, I mean, I can see it being the case because this is something that happens in studios as well, like not a fix it in post scenario, but that mistake will slide.
Right.
No one will notice, or it'll get faded enough in the printing process, or it'll get, subsumed by the inker and the colorist, and it'll get fixed over time. You
Hmm.
know, that it's interesting to me that you have to sort of make those choices because there's like a time pressure, probably an
Sure.
insane time pressure on the comic side that maybe on the music side too. Like every once in a while there's people who they spend years making an album, but in the 60s 70s some bands were cranking the friggin' things out two a
Yeah.
year.
Oh yeah.
So
Well, you and I are both Beatles fans, and the Beatles would make 3 a year.
yeah.
They'd show up for a day's work at Abbey Road or whatever studio they would be in, which usually was Abbey Road, and would work till lunch, figuring things out, and record all the instruments, record the vocals, sometimes in one take, or at least on one track, I should say,
Hmm.
on the vocal parts early on, and then yeah, the first record they ever made with EMI, which is called "Please Please Me," they recorded in a 12-hour session.
Right.
14 songs in 12 hours, which is insane by any other, any standard of today. So
uh, Granted,
I
the
find it
longest song
interesting.
that they recorded was a minute and 34 seconds.
Right. Right. Probably just cracking 2 minutes for, like "Please Please Me" or something like that. But I
Yeah.
find it interesting, like you're saying about these mistakes you can kind of hide, or maybe idiosyncrasies is a better word than mistake, because not
Hmm.
everything is about mistakes. Sometimes a brushstroke just doesn't come across, you know, like a vector line. It has its organic qualities, and it just
Yeah.
doesn't show up through the printing process. But in music, do you find that there are like, do you like the aesthetic where you can hear the imperfections or the idiosyncrasies, or is that something you try and minimize, or which, on a spectrum, where do you kind of see yourself as a maker?
I'm highly forgiving of things, especially there's often like what I'm happy accidents, things where you're like, this has happened more than once for me in terms of recording something. You sit down, you're like, all right, I need to record this instrument for this song, and there's what's called pre-roll. So you start the recording before you actually start playing, right? You don't like instantly start playing as soon as you hit the record button. You let the song play for a bit and then you come in on your part. And in that pre-roll, there's sometimes like, I'm just going to test to make sure this is actually making sound. And that happens to become like a riff in the song because you
Right.
just did a little like, and it's like, okay, that sounded cool there. Let's actually do that like for real a couple of more times and make it a part.
Yeah.
And I find that that's kind of it happens more often than you think. And there's that apocryphal story, and it seems true, but I'm not sure. The organ riff in Rolling Stone, Bob Dylan, like that, the guy was like, "Oh yeah, I got something for this," and
Al
sat down, and
Cooper.
he had nothing. Yeah, and he's like, "All right, I'll pretend I have something because I want to be on this song, but I
Right.
actually don't have a part," and then muddle through.
I think he's like 18 years old too. I think he's just a kid
Right.
that steps in. There's one like that also where Bachman Turner Overdrive is recording "Taking Care of Business," and they're going through the whole day in the studio, and it's fine. It just isn't great. And finally, like, the
Mm.
pizza guy gets there, drop off pizzas at the studio, and he can hear through the wall, or maybe in the sound booth, he can hear kind of what they're doing, and he's like, "You're missing a piano part." Like, what do you mean? Well, and he goes in, and the part you hear on the record is the pizza delivery guy.
Yeah.
So, like, there are these crazy, crazy stories of the happy accident. I'm really fascinated by, with film too, like what doesn't get captured um, accurately, and then how it lends itself to like the aesthetic, or it becomes a desirable thing, like a lens flare. Like a lens
Mm,
flare originally wasn't something that anyone wanted to capture, but now it's
yeah.
like a mainstay of a certain genre of movie, and certain directors and directors of photography that like they want that effect as part of their cinematic experience. I find all those things really neat. Oh, just another.
Does
Oh,
it?
please.
Sorry. I was just going to say.
Oh,
So, is there in the process of making art for comics? Are you like, oh, son of a bang, like that ink line I just made is not what I wanted it to be. Now I have to adjust the art to kind of fit that line instead of having it be that perfect moment that I wanted it to be. It's now going to be built around this thing that I wasn't trying to do, but well, maybe it'll be better.
I think that one has a lot to do with time.
Mm,
So just about everything you do these days, you can undo, especially
right.
since most Western comics. And I just quick asterisk. People will often say, "Oh, most comics," but again, our version of comics here in North America is a small fraction of what's actually being made in the world. Like the Franco-Belgian or Italian comics, but I mean, Japan is like this
Hmm.
absolute mecca in terms of scope for comic book making. And when we say something is, "Oh, X-Men #1 is the top selling," it's not the top selling anything. It's like 10 times that is selling in Japan. Like, you don't even know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just want to put that thought out there. We're just talking about a certain, small branch of comics on the massive tree. Um, Most of it is done digitally these days, and you can just on a Mac, Command Z, and just undoes
Yeah.
the thing you just did. But I've got a piece right here I'm working on for some Peregrine stuff, for some trading card art,
Hmm.
and I did as much as I could in a rough sketch, and then I go to ink over top of that after I've tightened up some pencils, and I see mistakes once I've scanned it back in and I've looked at it from a distance. I change the size, I'll flip it around, and I can see problems. But because it's just a black and white drawing, like there's no grayscale on this. It's just black and white. I can
Yeah.
just go in with a tool, a black paintbrush, and change any line I want. I can paint white over it. I can paint black over anything. So you can modify any element, and you can cut a character out, shrink them. Like, you can really change so much of what you're doing um, if you have the time to do it. But then at the same time, other people might really enjoy that organic experience, that tactile. I want to make this by hand. I want it to, I want what gets scanned in and reproduced to be an accurate representation of the thing I made by hand. And
Yeah.
from a music point of view, this makes me think of Wilco and one of their records. Um, the name escapes me. I don't think it's a Ghost is Born. I think it's the one before Ghost is Born. But maybe I'm wrong. The band went from being like 5 or 6 players down to 4, and they recorded a whole bunch of stuff in the aughts. They recorded a whole bunch of tracks on Pro Tools with a million tracks, just infinite tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when they started losing band members, and for a variety of reasons, they decided, what, we can't actually ever play this album the way we've recorded it. So
Yeah.
let's learn live versions of these ornate arrangements, and then we will record the live versions in studio, essentially live, like live off the floor kind of stuff, like a bed tracks, and that will be the record we make. It's like
Mm,
our replaying of this very ornate demo, which we thought was going to be the record, but now it's just the demo. And so all those layers of guitars go down to becoming one guitar track.
right.
And you pick up the things you need to represent that are most important. And I find that is like really interesting for like pulling out and reiterating um, in your process of trying to reach your final. Before you and I went live with this, we were just talking about writing a story and then like deleting that draft and then rewriting it from scratch based on what you think what you wrote. And there's something
Yeah.
really interesting about kind of the impression that something leaves with you. Maybe that second version you do is almost more to the point, because you're like,
Mm.
you're kind of tired of it. Like, enough dicking around, let's just get to it. And you kind of know what's important now that you've done the whole thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? With comics, I think a lot of people, myself included, I kind of want to draw the whole book and then look at it and then take things out or add in
Yeah.
what's missing, you know? Yeah. Um, Another thing I want to know if you think there's any connection between comics and music here. A lot happens in comics in the gutter. So this is like in the space between panels, where
Right.
if a character gets ready to jump and they're poised to jump, in the next panel they've landed. Like, your mind does the work of animating the character from one panel to the next. You do the motion, and I would argue that the more that the cartoonist guides you through that process and leaves room for you to do those imaginings, the more you're actually going to enjoy the story, and the more like the drama will mean to you because you play a part in it.
Mm.
They're not spoon feeding you every detail, right? It's like, so do you think that there's any connection to that in music, where where there's room for the listener to be active?
I think much like in a certain sense in any story, there's a space for you to be like empathetic with the characters, and
Right.
so in my thought process, lyrically, there's a lot of space for you to, include somebody into the narrative of a song, and that is it's an interesting exercise that in specificity there's a bit of a universality. Like,
Mhm.
it's odd that sometimes the more specific you get with a lyric, the more it applies to everyone's life in a different way.
Right.
um Musically speaking, I think there's such a range of what people hear, what they even apprehend when listening to a song. There are people
Right.
who don't really hear much. They don't know, they can't pull out individual parts, and there's nothing wrong with that. They still can enjoy music. There's like, obviously, and then there's other people who are like, oh, you hear that little thing on the pan hard left? It's like a little electric guitar part over there. Yeah, if you're a musician, and or anybody who listens very intensely to
Yeah.
music, and you want to pull it apart that way, that's available to you. Um, I love that there's a band called Of Montreal that speaking about ornate arrangements, like, they go hard. Everything you can think of is in their song. And the thing that I like about that is sometimes a couple of instruments kind of combine in this mix of tons and tons of different things going on. A couple of instruments will combine in a way that's like, that's a weird sound that I'm not sure what's making that sound. And
Yeah.
it's not actually one instrument that's making it. It's like there's a melodica paired with a glockenspiel that has a weird effect on it, and the two of those things together are making this kind of angelic fluttery notes that are happening that you're like, oh, that's really cool. So there is that too, like the like phantom instruments that can kind
Right.
of pop in, or notes that you hear that aren't really there.
Yeah. That's I hear that sometimes with records by the Kinks when they really get going. I hear guitar parts that are a mix of different things. I think it's one guitar, but it's really like a mash of a few things. Back to what you're saying about the lyrics, I was thinking about Big Star's song 13, and I have a whole narrative in my head as to what that song is actually about. I don't ever want to hear the background of where that song comes from,
Yeah.
because it for me, there's a whole coming of age story and this dynamic between this boy and this girl, and some of the literal lyrics, like, they're talking about Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones, but they don't say what they're talking about Paint It Black by the Rolling Stones. Like, what he says,
Yeah.
like, tell them what we said about Paint It Black. Like, what did you say? I'm
Yeah.
so interested in these little things that happen in this beautiful little coming of age song, and I'm so invested in the characters in that story because it's me. Like I'm doing the work for who these two people are, and I'm making connections to my childhood, or being 13 or whatever age those kinds of things happen to me. So I find that really neat, how sometimes it's what you don't say and what you don't show that uh, really gets the reader or the listener on board. I just want a quick hello to Anthony, who says, "Good evening, gentlemen. Looking forward to this episode of Looney Tunes. I mean, madness. That is Uncanny X-Men 153 for sure." The Looney Tunes thing is
Strap in.
it's strong. Gary Shipman Art, hello, Gary. How are you? Nice to have you back here again. This issue. I guess we can move on. Oh, go ahead, please.
Well, I was just going to say, to bring it into an X-Men sphere. So then, like, I was saying that Spider-Man is my guy, but like that's he's my avatar in
Absolutely.
the Marvel universe in a certain sense. And I love X-Men as well. I wasn't reading at this time. I was a bit too young to even be.
You were illiterate.
Yeah, I was not reading yet. But I believe my first issue of X-Men was the issue just before the Morlock massacre, and that was my first issue, and I had no idea what was going on. There's so many characters happening, and I was like, what is this? But I was pretty interested in it. But there's so many hooks essentially in X-Men,
right?
Like for almost any type of person to get into this and have, that's my character. Kitty Pryde is me in this world, or Wolverine is me. Like, and it's kids, right? That's the whole point of it. Young adults and kids who have powers.
Wolverine.
And Wolverine and Professor X, who some kids will be like, yeah, I'm Professor X.
I can't think of very many, but there might be one in your house. That sounds like my children, actually. Blankets and tea. It's like two of their absolute favorite things, and they like bald men, so it's good. But what you're saying about like just having Kitty Pryde and Wolverine both as your gateway, that sums up exactly. But I would have put them in reverse order for me. Like Wolverine is my guy, and Kitty Pryde is the other part of me.
Here's the thing: Wolverine is Canadian, so as a Canadian boy, you're like, yeah, I'm a scrapper, and I'm just like Wolverine. Like, there's no, you can't help but want to be. It is. He's the Canadianness of it, I think, is an extra. Like,
it was a bonus for sure. And I don't even know when I discovered that he was a Canadian character. And again, I want to put an asterisk next to that, because he's a Canadian character in name.
Yes.
Like he's labeled as a Canadian character, but there's nothing actually inherently Canadian about A, his genesis, and B, the representation. I mean, there aren't guys like that, that's not really what a lot of Canadians are like. But I definitely agree that like the thought that he was Canadian was enough for me to believe,
the fact that all of his powers are hockey based, and that he was recruited by the NHL when the original six were there.
Yes, he actually is. I believe he's one of the founders.
Yes.
It's so funny though, that Kitty Pryde Wolverine combo thing. There's something really magical about that, because Wolverine is in a way, he's sort of the epitome of what you would strive to be. Like he is very true to himself. If he doesn't like you, it's out front. If he does like you, it's out front. He's loyal to death. He does what he wants to do when he wants to do it. He's like a fully formed ego, very, very healthy in that way. And so he kind of gets to be who he wants to be. So he's kind of ideal in that way for a reader. Like, oh, this is exactly, I wish I could be as bold as, and as transparent and as honest as a character as he is in his way. I don't want to go chopping people up, but the fact that if he wants to, he's going to go do it. And then Kitty being just like that, the innocent but real clever and like a good natured person. And by the time you and I were both reading around that, New Mutants or the Mutant Massacre, which is around the time I started as well, like she's savvy. She's young but been through things, and it shows in the way she is portrayed in that series. David, might as well say hello. Didn't want to interrupt your conversation. I've been here the whole time.
Oh my
Say
gosh.
hello always. You are part of the conversation. We talk about you when you are not here, David. So I'm glad
It's true.
you're in this. Same to me, my ex-friends. Hope you are well, Jason, and I'm glad you're here, man.
I'm hoping to bring that Chris Sanigan energy.
Does he move around a lot?
No, he doesn't.
I wish there were some Chris Sanigan tropes other than the accent play, and looking up words that I don't know. He'll often like, oh, go onto the Google and figure out what, what the word is. But yeah, that's pretty funny. Should we get into it?
Yeah, let's dive in.
I
I
asked
have
you
to
to
have a
prep.
question before we
Well,
start,
please
though.
do.
In terms of like, you've spoken about the fact that there are these, I wouldn't call them lost issues, but just like you got an issue that doesn't fit anywhere in the timeline.
Right.
It can kind of go wherever the hell you want it to go. This seems like one of those, and I'm just wondering, like, is there any information you have about how this one came to be? Because it's so wacky, and that's my wife coming down the stairs.
My resource book is right there. And I just
Nice.
didn't look to see this issue before we started today. I meant to, but instead I made a delicious, delicious coffee. If there was a section where, we have a stall and I can look through and see, there might be a reason for it. So those issues, the common parlance for them is an inventory issue.
Mm.
And Dave Cockrum, the penciler on this one, it did not do the last two issues. So like he's been up to something,
Right.
He might have taken a little more time to do issue 150, and so maybe he's recovering, didn't do 151 or 152. Maybe he was off doing another project. I didn't come across it in the minimal research I did, and I just really should go reading that. I should go read that book and see if there was a note as to why this happened. Because you're right, it could kind of pop in anywhere. Although the fact that the story starts with the recovery from the last issue makes me think it isn't an inventory issue, because like part of then again, you could make those pages in like that's like the first two pages. You know what I mean?
The bulk of it is an inventory issue, perhaps, but they tie it
framing
in
device
in the beginning somewhere.
Yeah. Jason says working on the Marvel Fanfare stuff. So Marvel Fanfare, I don't know if you know, Graydon, is at this time was another Marvel comic that really was an opportunity to publish a bunch of inventory issues and short stories by a variety of people, and they just had them sitting around like to refresh things, so get them out there. And the first, I don't know, I think 4 issues of Marvel Fanfare are straight up Marvel team up inventory. So being a Spider-Man guy, like when you look at Marvel Fanfare numbers 1 and 2 for sure, it's a great artist named Michael Golden and Chris Claremont writing, who was writing Marvel Team Up for a while, and it's Spider-Man and Angel and Kazar. And you're like, wait a minute, why Spider-Man and Angel? Like that is and so because they were planning to do this Marvel Team Up thing, and before it ever went further down the road, they shifted and made it for Marvel Fanfare. So that series, which goes about, I don't know, maybe 40 or something issues, it's always these inventory stories that are on nicer paper. So it's a kind of a good chance to reflect some nicer art. This one, I don't think was going to be outside of X-Men ever. I think this one, but just by my reading of it, it feels like it was supposed to be at this time because of those first couple pages, but it could be something that maybe Cockrum always wanted to do. It feels like a very Cockrum focus because he gets to draw funny stuff.
Yeah.
It feels like the artist wants to do some fun stuff, and it's super light on story.
Yeah.
Never have you seen Never Ending Story?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Valcor.
Just starting there. We'll put that out there. So I'm going to bring in the comic book here into our nonsense.
Here's the other thing that I found very interesting, and I don't mean to spoil anything, but just like it deals with some character stuff that is oddly heavy for the tone of it. And I was like, is this something that Claremont is like, I wanted to get this across, that I have this idea about what should have happened. Um,
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
let's get into it. Just
Yeah.
for at least let's set the stage. Keeping in mind, especially for anyone who hasn't seen this show before, Chris Claremont, the writer, writes X-Men for about 17 years, and for maybe about 15 of that, or maybe 14, he's kind of uncontested in terms of getting his way without too much resistance, other than amazing and sometimes tumultuous collaboration with John Byrne, which we've passed those 30, 40 issues already, but he gets to be really in charge of his own ship, along with editor Louise Simonson, at this point still called Louise Jones professionally. They really become these, they steer that ship for a decade, kind of unfettered. And um, the death of Jean Grey is not something that they weren't unanimous on it. So
Yeah.
they basically get themselves in a bit of a situation because through telling the Dark Phoenix story, there is a panel where Phoenix consumes the sun, like a star, and an entire solar
And
system is
accidentally
destroyed.
wipes out a civilization. Yeah.
Yes, which is fine, but it wasn't in the script that we show the civilization. But John Byrne, being the penciler of the issue, he kind of gets to choose what we see in a lot of ways, as as he's generating those stories. So he shows the people on the planet looking up as like their star is being destroyed and like they're about to all
Yeah.
die. So as the editor in chief Jim Shooter sees this later on, he's like, you guys know, like, she has to die for that. You can't, like, this is heavy. We're like, this is an order basically coming from the executive office. Like, this character has to die, and that's fine. It should be
Yeah.
dead forever. No big deal, and move on. It's going to be a great story. You'll do a great job with that. And so Byrne and Claremont follow through, and they kill off the character, and they have the promise that she's never coming back. That Marvel's not going to pull a 180 and try and bring the character back superhero styles, which of course they do. So I think there's something. If they knew they were going to kill her from the beginning, I think they would have written it differently.
Yeah.
They maybe would have had some more foreshadowing, would have laid some other pieces, because Claremont's laying pieces down sometimes 5 years in advance. Like, he's not afraid to really put out some plot threads and then let them dangle for years. So I think they would have probably told the story differently, knowing that it was going to end that way. And Claremont uses this story and many others as a way to like reframe the past a little bit. Keeping in
Yeah.
mind, like, readers aren't like, although a lot of kids are picking this up off the newsstand, they're sharing comics. Comics are still a little bit disposable. The collector's market is still niche. Comic book stores are starting to show up a little bit more, but they're not the dominant form of receiving your comic book. It's still a newsstand, 7-Eleven, grocery store, etc., etc. And there aren't back issues readily available. There are not trade paperbacks.
Yeah.
There's no.
Yeah.
So sometimes you can I don't mean gaslight in a bad way, but you can kind of tell someone retroactively that this was the story that I told you before.
Right.
This is I can reframe it, and you won't really notice that it's been changed. So I think there's some retconning happening or adding.
Yeah.
Yeah. One other quick note before we dive in: the classic X-Men or X-Men classic version of this cover is Mike Mignola. And it's his first
Ah.
one on this series. And I'm a big Mignola fan. I should have pulled it up, but I did not. But if you ever see the thumbnail
Boo.
for this episode, thank you. If you see the thumbnail for this episode, or have it, or look it up on your own, that issue it's interesting to see how he can't do, like, Mignola can't really do fun in this style. So his version of like Kitty Pryde and her internal narrative is very somber. It's to his strength, and he's such a great draftsman. So I love his stuff. Anyway, there you go. You ready, Graydon?
I'm ready. Check out that poster on the front of that X-Men.
Yep.
I think it's hilarious. It just looks like two storm heads.
Right.
We got
it's
Storm, and then we got Storm. What the?
right, because we're not expecting the other version, but this is
No.
really throws that trope forward of powerful women need to be killed, like that.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
X-Men is sort of
Yeah.
like known for anytime a woman gets really powerful, she becomes a danger and needs to be silenced or something, or in some way. And it's happened obviously to Jean Grey, and then happens to Storm. Yeah, but this is a fun cover, and there's a little something down at the bottom in the garbage there with a wagging tail, a little dragon,
Oh
which
yeah.
is kind of a fun one for us X-Men fans. Lockheed the Dragon is like her sidekick forever after.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited
Which
to
is
see
awesome.
Lockheed. Yeah. I'm also really glad that she's not in her goofy costume from the last couple issues.
Right.
And then we also get this line that is synonymous with the Monty Python Flying Circus, right? Like Monty Python and Alfred something completely different. And I guess they're playing with that joke on their own. Anyway.
Yeah.
Um,
BJ and the Bear.
I think there's nothing better than comic books with BJ and the Bear. All right. So I don't know how much actual reading you want to do of this issue. It's all pretty straightforward. I'm going to just do some quick narration off the top, just to sort of set the stage, let Claremont do the thing he's so good at doing. And
Quick
we'll go
question
from
though.
there. Shoot.
Are you ever tempted to do a like radio serial, like you know how every episode of Clone Wars starts?
Yeah. So, I mean, that style voice?
Yeah.
Would you like to do that? Go ahead.
Even by the X-Men standards, this has not been the best of times. True, they've just survived a ruthless assault by the villainous Hellfire Club. But in the process, the venerable mansion, which houses Professor Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, and which also doubles as the secret headquarters of the team of mutant superheroes founded by Xavier, suffered considerable damage. How considerable is only just becoming apparent. That's the French spelling of apparent. Apparent. I don't know.
Yeah, when we catch spelling mistakes, I always find it super ridiculous. Well done, by the way. That was good. You've been practicing that for days.
Oh, yeah. The clone troops are advancing on. No, anyway.
Yes. And for anyone who's watching this on the replay and changes the speed to like the 1.5 or 1.25, good luck with that one. That was would have been a mouthful. This is another, just from an art point of view, another example of Cockrum kind of really choosing these boring points of view. I think he's a good figure drawer, and he's a good communicator, but he just has really generic camera positions that don't do a lot of storytelling on their own. You can create suspense or feelings of optimism or a variety of things just by camera angles and where you put the horizon line. And have you seen the Fablemans yet?
No.
Okay, neither have I, but I've heard that there's this scene in it where there's a discussion about horizon lines. And if you put it near the top, it's interesting. You put it near the bottom, it's interesting. You put it in the middle, it's boring. And I find that Cockrum often puts things in the middle, and they can be very, very boring. You're getting some compliments here from the Peanut Gallery. David says, great reading. And Jason says, Tom Kane would be proud.
Perfect.
That is what you were going for.
Yes, 100%.
A quick Russian note. You know how Colossus often calls character comrade or calls them tovarish?
Yes.
Tovarish just basically means comrade. So I feel like it's just going back and forth with that. Dateline 1981. Unsure of where to take the franchise post-burn, Claremont spins his wheels for another issue. Inadvertently creates a classic. Yeah, people do have a soft spot for this issue.
That's good.
Yeah.
I love the wreckage look. Like I love how it's drawn, but you're right. Like I want to see how much Colossus is lifting. It's all just kind of cut away, right? And it's like he's probably lifting a couple of extra bus loads above him.
Absolutely. And I think of an artist like Frank Quietly, who is such a master of scale, would show us the full wreckage, so we have a sense of what a Colossus Peter actually is and how powerful he is. I also find it ridiculous and playful that the characters are in their superhero like their fighting
Right.
costumes
Let's clean
for
up
this.
in costume, guys.
Yes. And as a kid, I actually really loved the scenes where they were not in costume but using their powers, just sort of like the day-to-day stuff. So them doing chores, I enjoy. And
Yeah.
Wolverine should probably stop hacking at that thing the way he is. 'Cause that's a load-bearing beam, Logan. What are you doing? That wall's going to come down on your head.
That wall's going to come right down on top of you. That and Scott, he's like taking out a load-bearing beam. Anyway.
Yes.
Where do you wish this pile of wreckage placed, Cyclops?
Down by the boathouse, Colossus. We'll sort through it and try to determine what's salvageable when this mess is completely cleared out. Do you want to read Wolverine today, my Canadian friend?
No, you should do Wolverine. It's iconic at this point.
That's sweet of you. Hurry back, Petey. There's a whole heck of a lot more where that came from. Even by my standards, this was a scrap to remember. I beg to differ with you, my friend Wolverine. It was not a memorable fight in the least. But I appreciate this.
Maybe he meant it was a crap to remember, like a BM to. Anyway.
A spelling error. Yeah. So we
can skip some of the
we can skip most of it,
floridness.
Yeah.
It's like
go ahead.
That reintroduction of everybody every issue that I know that they have a mandate. I know that it's coming from the top and it's like every issue is somebody's first issue. But I also am like, Jesus.
Right. I also anyway, so Colossus is taking stuff down. That's fine. And we have now a connection to an earlier issue where we have Storm, who would be really helpful, by the way, in dealing with some of the wreckage with her power set. She could lightning that stuff. But she's getting cleaned up because she took a beating dished out by herself. Last issue where she had her persona, as she calls it, swapped into the body of Emma Frost, the White Queen. So when she was dishing out the beating to stop the White Queen in her body, she was actually damaging her own being. So
sounds grim.
Yes. Carol Danvers, in the movies known as Captain Marvel, is living in the X Mansion, is helping out at this moment. She's depowered at this point in her timeline because she encountered Rogue, the Rogue's first appearance in Avengers Annual 10, and Rogue is a power thief. And
right.
Rogue holds on to Carol Danvers too long and absorbs her powers permanently, ? Because we don't know how long it'll last, if it'll last. And of course it lasts for years, but they eventually reframe Miss Marvel Carol Danvers as a character called Binary in a bunch of issues after this, and then she'll come back eventually as Miss Marvel, and then come back as Warbird, and down the road as Captain Marvel. She takes the full title. So there she is working with Storm, tidying her up, helping with some of those cuts, and Storm showing off a bruise around her mouth. And Nightcrawler comes in saying he's teleported around and he's checked everything out. Are you like in the mood to read Nightcrawler?
I could do that, yeah.
No, but
Professor,
sometimes people have like a preference. Okay, go ahead, please.
I finished my inspection tour. I thought I'd teleport and give you the news in person rather than over the intercom, but by having you read my mind. Things are as bad as we feared. The danger room, the prime computer, and one wing of the house are a total loss. The hangar complex and our Blackbird aircraft suffered minimal damage. Professor, we cannot effect repairs by ourselves. We lack the tools, the raw materials, the expertise. What are we to do? We got a little Scotty, but...
The best we can, Nightcrawler. With what we have. He's quite right, though. Our physical and financial resources have been strained to the breaking point. And at this moment, I see no viable solution. I find it interesting. They don't really talk about where the X-Men get their money from. We just know that Xavier has an estate, and maybe they do something with their money, maybe they don't. But they have a whole bunch of superhero friends, man. Just have a build party, Come paint my house. One of those parties.
A little nice a superhero barn raising.
Yes, and now we kind of get the inciting incident of the issue, which is that Kitty Pryde, being the sweetheart that she is calling in Big Brother of the baby in the issue. She's calling in Colossus to basically come do a bedtime story for his little sister who's been staying at the house for a little while now. A tiny little Illyana Rasputin, who will eventually down the road, her powers will get revealed and she'll be a really cool superhero called Magic, played by Anya Taylor-Joy in the New Mutants movie. Did you watch that yet, by the way?
No,
Why not, dude?
I didn't even know that there was one.
Yeah,
I gotta get on this.
there is a New Mutants movie that is its own history is very, very interesting and was very troubled. And it premiered on essentially on Disney Plus, I believe. So yeah, it's there now and it's not good. But it's still
Mm,
really interesting to see another X-Men movie playing with genre, it's playing with horror, and it's a new group of characters, and she's really well cast, I think, just visually as Illyana, and it's neat to see. It's worth the time to check out as a superhero movie fan and as an X-Men fan. It's worth it. And we get a few really
yeah.
fun Easter eggs here, by the way. First one, I don't know if you can see, Kitty Pryde is wearing an ElfQuest t-shirt. Are you
Yes.
familiar with ElfQuest?
Barely. Yeah, I had a friend who was quite into it, and it's funny to me that there's an ElfQuest T-shirt in here.
So Marvel gets the license for ElfQuest, and they start publishing the original ElfQuest comics as reprints through their. Oh man, I forget what their imprint was called. It wasn't Epic. Um, Someone in the chat will have to remind me, but maybe it'll come to me as we go. And I actually collected those from the newsstand as a kid. When I saw number one, I was like, "Oh, this is I can get on board at the
Right.
beginning because everything I'm reading
Yeah.
is in the 200s." So I'll check it out. And I really actually I enjoyed my couple years reading ElfQuest, but it was originally an indie comic, and it was in black and white, and it had a huge cult following, and
Wow.
it was a husband wife team that made them, and so it's kind of fun to have Kitty Pryde being like representing her as being in the know with some cool indie comic, which is neat. And of course, we've got Fozzie Bear there
Yes.
as a stuffy or as a plushie or whatever you want to call it. A little Frank Oz for us. We know there's lots of Star Wars in these things sometimes, so nice to have the voice of Yoda there. Um, and then of course those two bunnies that are in her bedroom on the wall.
Yeah.
They're just two random bunnies. Oh, it was epic. Trevor, how you doing, man? He's saying it. Yeah, it was epic. I or wait, are you saying that the comic book was epic, dude, or the
With a
name of the?
capital
Yeah,
E.
yeah, exactly. So Illyana prefers that Kitty tells the story. So Kitty's all in. She's going to tell one. She's going to tell a story.
I
But
also
there's
love.
something really weird here.
You talking last panel?
Yeah, you go
The
ahead.
the after a request like that, how can I refuse? I'm glad the professor telepathically taught us all Russian.
That my
Okay.
like car wheels came to a screeching halt when I read that.
Yeah.
It's like, hold on, what? This is like, the best version of this. It's Neo in the Matrix, and I know Kung Fu.
Yeah.
Like you have a moment where he's like, okay, everybody, I'm going to teach everyone Russian. Everyone take a deep breath. This is going to tingle. And they all just close their eyes, take a breath, and now they all speak Russian because he just telepathically, drops it in the Dropbox, the telepathic Dropbox, and they all can download that file. But the weird version of this is that this dude's putting information into people's heads.
Right.
And I wonder what that consent form is like. Would you like to know Russian? Click yes or no. And would you like to know my favorite spot to have my back scratched? Yes or no. Um, it is
Like
a
now
it's
I know Russian,
precarious.
and I also have a weird desire to give Professor X a sandwich every day at noon.
Right. It is odd, and I think this is um, a fun thread to pull on, like to look at the devious side of that character where he could go. You think just
This is
teaching
an
Illyana
excellent
English
point.
would save a lot of time.
Excellent point.
Professor X prompts people to accept all cookies.
You're going to want to accept those cookies.
Yeah, that's very funny. It is weird, and I also love that they don't change how people like their colloquialisms when they speak another language. So Wolverine still
Yeah.
speaks like Wolverine when he's speaking whatever language it is. Usually would be in his case, Japanese. But she says in Russian, "Lessie, yeah, oh yeah." Like
Yeah.
Lessie is her teenager lazy way of saying "let's see." But in Russian, it might be "let us see." You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It wouldn't be just "let's see." Like those words don't bleed together probably in Russian. So I find that fun. And I wonder if this was like an afterthought, like he added that bit in and wasn't expecting it. So as they started, like, let's have her talk Russian, and then they just said, "Oh, I better explain why we can speak Russian."
Here's the other thing that's interesting to me typographically, just putting those pointy braces, we understand
Right?
this is not English anymore. Like,
Yes.
if you've read a couple of comics, and sometimes they'll have on the first one, they'll have a little asterisk translated from the Russian or whatever, but
Yes.
they almost don't need it at any point, and
In
you
this
just kind
case,
of
I
get
think
it.
you can give the reader like a page grace.
Hmm.
So if on that first page you literally, you give exposition that it's in Russian, then you don't have to put the asterisks and the editorial note. But if you don't,
Right.
you know, so forwardly just express that it is Russian, then you need to do that little editorial note. In this case, it is odd. But anyway, you're good to point that out. I forgot to make mention. And then we get the story starts. The whole thing is like, I'm going to tell you a bedtime story.
It's
Here
gonna
we
be a
go,
beaut.
kid.
I think I'll call it 2 pages of ads.
I love 2 pages of ads. I'm always so curious about these things.
Coins, coins.
Free comic lust. What's that? Oh, list. Sorry. And we get Kitty's fairy tale. And the fun kind of framing device. This is in a book, an old book.
Yeah, it's hilarious to me. A book within a book.
Yeah. And we get the actors, like the players and what characters they are. And so you can read ahead of time what everyone's going to be. And Kitty Pryde is Pirate Kitty. Peter Rasputin is Colossus, her true love, her inappropriate true love. I just want to also say, if anyone gets triggered by some of these representations and stereotypes, and I understand, and yeah, just be warned. Yeah, there
Yep.
are some things here that could easily be offensive, and no excuses need to be made. Just putting it out there. Scott Summers as the Noble Prince, Charles Xavier as the Wizard. I'm offended by his facial hair. Aurora Storm as the Genie, and Kurt Wagner Nightcrawler as, under protest, a Bamf. And this is the first appearance of a Bamf. And what a fun idea. And it is an enduring one. We see it a lot down the road. Logan Wolverine as the Fiend with no name. The SR-71 Blackbird as Lockheed the Dragon. Also a really funny, like, this is how Lockheed began. And I'm shocked this is sort of where he comes from as a character. And Jean Grey,
Yeah.
Phoenix as the Enchanted Princess. And I never thought she would be in this issue. I'm very surprised.
Yeah. The Wolverine hat
Yeah,
is awesome.
it is. Another note just about the collaboration here. So this is Dave Cockrum and Joe Rubinstein making the art. Cockrum is one of the co-creators of the Phoenix version of Jean Grey. So, Lee and Kirby come up with Jean Grey originally, back in 63, and other writers get their hands on the character and don't advance her much. Claremont and Cockrum, when they take on the series, within 6 issues, they have her reborn as Phoenix, and that becomes the dominant form that, like, everyone kind of knows her as. I mean, people know her as Dr. Jean Grey from the cartoon, but you the Phoenix persona and the Dark Phoenix persona is forever tied with Jean Grey as a character. You can't have one without the other anymore. And that's, kudos to Claremont and to partially, to Cockrum for the Phoenix part of Dark Phoenix. And then, of course, to Byrne for taking it to the next level. But Cockrum is not on that journey. He doesn't get to draw the character through the Dark Phoenix saga. He's not there to have her die. Like, he wasn't there for any of it. And I wonder
Right.
if when he gets back on the series, he's like, what did you guys do to my girl? Like, I
Yeah.
redesigned this character to last forever and to some degree. Like, I wonder if he felt any proprietorship over, is that even a word? Like,
Yeah.
I wonder if he felt anything about having his creation or co-creation kind of taken away and turned into this character that's now out of the series. So this is kind of a neat chance for him to draw her again in some form, and maybe figure out what's going on down the road. I'm seeing some Flash Gordon like movie serials and like these.
For sure.
It,
There's a lot of that, and like the different genres of it all kind of colliding. Like there's, you know, every kind of adventure serial
yeah.
almost on display through this section.
Jason says, I've seen it all. So, Jason, are you referring to your shock at some of these elements in this issue? Like, have you read this one before? I'm interested to hear your take on it. And is anyone else seeing? Is his name Fool Killer? In Kitty's costume with her saber and the stripy pants and the swashbuckler boots and that hat. There's a Marvel character. I have to pull it up. I think named Fool Killer, I believe, and I think he wears that costume in some way.
What about? Isn't there a guy? I want to say villain, a Captain America villain,
I've
Madcap.
got it wrong. It's Madcap. Fool Killer also has a hat, but you're right. It's Madcap. Thank you. I'm just looking
And
up
he's like
pictures. Oh,
indestructible.
yeah.
He's like Deadpool before Deadpool.
Right. And with one of the Deadpool action figures that Hasbro released, they actually, I'll pull that up and I'll show you. You ready for this?
Oh my gosh.
What, are you looking at something?
No,
Okay, cool.
I'm
Let's
waiting to
share
see
my
what this is going to
screen.
look like.
So here on the
Well,
far right, that is Madcap. So I
yeah.
mean, this costume is like really pulled. Elements from this are pulled almost right from this drawing, and then this is the action figure that they did of Deadpool that came with an alternate head of Madcap and the hat, and his shirt says X-Men on it. I have that, by the way. If you ever want to play
Nice.
with it. I don't know why you would, but there you go.
That's a fun design, though.
It like the similarities are really, really weird. It is a fun design, sure. I'll give you that. I do not know my Madcap history, so again, maybe someone in the chat can school us on that. That would be fun. But yeah, like you were saying about movie serials and old like newspaper strips, it feels like there's a lot of that love being put into this. I'm feeling like Sinbad, all that kind of stuff. And basically, she's a
why
pirate. Please, what were you gonna say?
which is why we should be like, once upon a time, Kitty begins in the Caliphate of New York. There lived a young woman named Pirate Kitty. She was known throughout the land, together with her stalwart companion and true friend with benefits, Colossus. They were loved by the poor and downtrodden. In whose name? Well, I'm hard to read this part.
Yes. In whose defense they fought.
In whose defense they fought, and hated by the rich, cruel oppressors of the commoners.
So we've got a Robin Hood Little
yeah.
John. We've got that every trope there is.
Oppressors always hate things.
Yes.
I love the very background is literally New York buildings.
Yes. Because it has to be this kind of weird mishmash, It is very odd. Anthony says this issue does feel like another attempt, or to show that he truly just loves it, at Claremont making a Star Wars with a swashbuckling bend. Yeah, right. I mean, he's not shy about his love of pop culture and of genre culture. Like Claremont seems to see all of the movies and knows all the stuff, not just of 1981. But even today, if you listen to a contemporary interview with him, he's critiquing problems with like Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Like he watches all of it. He's into it. He's totally into it. So it's the caricatures that you're referring to. Yeah, the Wolverine one is, and then I think the Nightcrawler one is adorable. The Wolverine one is hilarious. Yeah. Hey, the Iron Spider Kid 2099 says, "Did they have X-Men versus Juggernaut?" So what do you mean? I'm interested. When in this story, is Juggernaut going to be in this issue? I'm interested. I love Juggernaut. I love when the X-Men fight Juggernaut. So I'm curious.
I will say this is at least a fairly dynamic panel. Like there's a
It
lot going
is.
on, and it's a fun one to look at.
It is. There's nothing too exaggerated. It could have, I think, in the hands of another penciler, it would have been a way more dynamic layout. I find him just dry. I find him kind of boring. But that's my bias.
I do love anybody who's swinging on a rope where the rope curls around their arm as they swing.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that they're having fun, It's a fun story. So yeah, they're in the market and fighting people and throwing stuff. I don't know. They're just basically, we've caught them like mid-adventure, and as this story is going to play out, there's going to be something that so they were trying to run away from the mob and go back to where their boats
take
are.
the high road.
Yeah, and they stumble upon a wizard on a floating carpet, which is Professor
Yes.
X in a wheelchair, like he's unable to walk, sort of piece. And Cyclops is, I don't even want to go into like what this portrayal is, but he is a prince that has his eyes covered, and yeah, they get mugged.
Yeah.
And
Lost your way, gentlemen? That's too bad for you.
let us pass,
Is what
please.
I'm saying.
We are simple travelers. We come in peace.
Well, la-di-daw, listen to the youngster talk. Yield apart in pieces, you scut, less'n you hand over your gold.
I warn you, sir. I am a wizard. We both possess power. Oh!
Me too, Baldy. By all the great gods, the young one's eyes spout fire. He's a djinn, a demon.
Pin his head, rope to the fire so the fire can't touch us. Then slit his throat.
Aye, then we'll see if demons can bleed and die.
It'll be a pleasure. Ow! Hey, let go my arm. Yee!
If you insist, Tovarish, happy landings.
It's Pirate Kitty and Colossus. Run!
A sensible decision. Make an even more sensible one. Don't come back.
It's so ridiculous.
Why is that even more sensible? It's like similarly sensible.
Yes. And I have so many questions just about like how is there still Russian in this world? Like
Yeah.
how did history play out the same when obviously everything is a mishmash, including the fact there are skyscrapers.
Yes.
Like for the technology to build a skyscraper, it conflicts. Yeah, I don't want to overthink it, but I don't find this world to be a particularly well thought out or interesting one. It's just
Right.
all play. So much
It's-
so that Professor Xavier is hovering magically upside down. Yeah.
Let's just shove everything into
Yes.
one world without considering how that world came to be.
Well, that's
Those wharf rats. Sorry.
No, it's okay. You read your bit. And
I just want to say wharf rats. Those wharf rats will not bother you again. Your comrade seems to have lost his balance.
He is a wizard and my friend.
Which is how I want to introduce everybody that I know. This is my friend Jason. He's a wizard and my friend.
Let's straighten him. Oh, yeah, let's. Yeah, right. Let's, like when she says Lessie before, or let whatever she said. Let's straighten him out, Colossus. Gently does it.
Are you hurt, sir?
Cliche, but only my pride. I'm not used to physical combat.
Only my kitty pride.
So he's got the Obi-Wan Kenobi thing going on where he wants to, get a boat to take them out of off planet, or wherever they need to go. And he's Xavier, master of the arts arcane. I like that. I'm interested in that side of it. And they're on a quest, and they want some help, and they're trying to battle a being that is transformed into absolute evil, which of course is Jean Grey turned into Dark Phoenix. So it's kind of weird that this is kind of going back a step. And I'm reminded, of course, that this is not actually, it's not Chris Claremont and Dave Cockrum telling the story. It's Kitty Pryde. So
Yeah.
she might not be a great storyteller, and they're bound by what they think she would tell, and by what tropes she would bring in, and what problematic ideas that she would incorporate into the story. So it is a really weird exercise. But can you imagine trying to be a writer and an artist to come up with something that a kid would think of that is also true to that character, but also really, really, really good?
Right.
To
Yeah.
make that world, it would be a very complicated juggling act, and I find it really interesting. David says, my memory always tells me this comic was more of a swords and sorcery medieval fantasy riff, but it really is primarily Sinbad. Yeah, I'm seeing lots of Sinbad in it, especially in the representations of Orientalism. Oh, Kitty is making it up as she goes along. She dropped out of the 8th grade. Give her a break. You make a really good point. I mean, she doesn't get
And
regular classes here?
she hasn't had a lot of interaction with folks of an Asian descent, so she's going on tropes.
Right. She's using the construct of the Oriental as an idea. Like this idea that everything east of Istanbul is exotic,
Yeah.
and
Right.
yeah, it's a problematic old one, and it's a classic, you could say. Yeah, she's being homeschooled, I guess. Yeah, you could look at it that way.
Yeah.
But she got taught Russian, dude, so she's
Yeah.
getting educated. Yeah, they can teach that girl
She's
all
getting
sorts of things.
mind forced various languages and then making up stories. It's a pretty good life.
Once she was a creature of light, now she is one of darkness, a bringer of life, of love, of joy. She has become the destroyer, the chaos, the ravager of worlds. She is Dark Phoenix. I want to pitch you an idea for a product. Those wooden, like, word phrase hangings that people put on their doors or in their foyer or like on the wall at their cottage or something like that, where it's like life, love, dream in like
Right.
fun 3 different fonts. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a 2-sided one, or it's a 2-piece, and one is like a bringer of life, love, joy, and then you like keep walking, and it's like she has become a destroyer of chaos, ravager of worlds. Just it's both, and so it just shows that everyone has 2 sides to them. We're all struggling with our inner angels and demons, and it's a true representation of all of us, I think. That's just my pitch. Would you like to make those with me and sell them?
I'm down. Let's laser cut those tonight.
All right. And then she strafed the harbor with bolts of starfire. Trademark, sinking every ship in sight.
There's a lot of alliteration in that line there.
Yes, definitely. So she's stopping their quest to stop her.
Your
Before it
quest
even
is over,
starts.
old man.
Yes,
That's a terrible Dark Phoenix voice.
It is. I love it. Keep going.
I'll try a little bit more what I think it might sound like. Your quest is over, old man, almost before it truly begun.
I don't like the sound of that. Know any good defense spells, Wiz?
I have ascended as far above humanity as it is above the amoeba. I am a goddess incarnate. I told you what would happen should you continue to defy me. You chose to defy my warning. Now pay the price. Get down, Princess Cyclops. I will protect.
Colossus! One quick little art note. I don't know if you'll be able to see unless I really zoom in, which I can do.
Whoa.
On that panel. I'll show you. Colossus. Come here, buddy. So this explosion, and I don't think you'll be able to see in this version, but I can see on mine. The explosion on his hitting his chest So that is ink that's been put down with a brush. Then there is actually fingerprints. So Rubinstein,
Huh.
on my version, you can see. I'm going to hold it close. I wonder if I'll be able to get a good view. Oh, it's not going to. Okay, you won't be able to see it clearly, but in here I can see. So he's put ink on his thumb, probably, or finger, and dabbed it on, and
Interesting.
that gives it an effect that doesn't translate. But I can see it as clear as day when I go up close here without my specs on. That he's using that to create some of the in between, and then he's putting also where it's sort of like these orange ticks inside the explosion. Those
Mm-hmm.
are where he's applied white media, and then the colorist has gone on with the color after. But some of the in between, it's not hatch marks or anything like that. It's actually fingerprints. I can see a little bit on there, but he's putting his finger in ink and going from there. Anyway,
Wow.
and they do that again in this issue another time, and I will point it out then. But I don't know if it's a useful bit of information because no one can see but me. So sad.
I am not harmed, Katya, though this starbolt staggered me. Next time, Tin Man, I will reduce you to melted slag.
There will be no next time, my lady. Your reign of terror is ended.
No!
And he holds up an orb of some kind. What could that orb be? And if you remember, comic convention. If you remember in a
Sweet.
previous issue, there
Learn to draw
was
comics. All right.
there was Lilandra gave Cyclops like a snow globe of Jean Grey's face, so he could always remember her as she was. And so it's like that's what this thing is I wonder if Kitty sort of has seen the snow globe around the house, around the mansion,
Right.
and she's incorporating the things that she's seen and the stories that she's been told and the way she's been told them into the way she's retelling this story to Illyana.
She's a real Kaiser Soze.
What do you mean by that?
That's what happens in The Usual Suspects. He incorporates things that he sees around him into a
Yes.
story.
Gotcha. So then, okay, yes, great movie, by the way, but don't spoil it, okay?
Sorry. Spoiler alert. Movie's
So
only
would you like-
25 years old.
Please continue as the narrator if you can.
In the blink of an eye, before the wizard can cast his enchantment, she has gone, leaving utter devastation in her wake. This round goes to you, old man, but as surely as the sun spins in the heavens, there will be a reckoning.
Indeed there will, my child. For although it may cost my life, I will persevere.
What's that, Wiz?
Jean's soul, her true self. This crystal is the only weapon capable of destroying Dark Phoenix. But alas, with all these vessels sunk, I may never get close enough to use it.
Leave that one to me.
Pirate Kitty gestured and summoned, but nothing happened.
This is going to be harder than I thought.
What is she doing? Is the child a sorceress?
Something like that. Just watch, you'll see.
Shush, you two. I'm concentrating. And this is the sound of my fingers doing that thing.
I wonder who's saying this. That may be the case, but I get the feeling someone is not listening.
I get the feeling that if someone keeps this up, he's going to regret he was ever hatched. I don't want to call my dog by doing that. Pardon me. About flipping time. Where you been, you big galoot? Goodness.
Where do you think, darling? Down where it's safe.
Okay, hold on. That sounds Scottish to me.
I think he's Scottish.
You think he's Scottish? Okay, cool. Then please continue.
If you look, the next line. Watch me. I'm the last of my kind, darling. And every time you ask me help, and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
and he says Colleen too.
Now
either he's Irish or he's Scottish.
Right. So that's where I was going with it. When I read it, I thought Irish because in my head I thought it was like a little nod to Banshee and the the Blackbird, like the Lockheed jet, at the same time. But if you're
I
going to
can
use
try to go
like,
Irish.
no, you do whatever you want. So I'm not familiar with the use of the word Colleen as a noun other than a proper name. Does it mean like a girl, or like what is it?
I'm
What does
not
it infer?
sure, to be frank. I think it's just a reference to. It's kind of like darling.
Or Sheila?
Yeah,
And does it always have three E's?
not usually. It's usually Colleen, which they spell it correctly later on. But yeah, it is funny. Clean.
Yeah, I'm looking it up just to see what. Yeah, Google doesn't like it. It's an Irish language name, an Irish origin, a generic term for a woman or girl. Yeah, okay. But it's usually
So
double L, double E.
I should go slightly Irish.
Whatever you're comfortable doing, uh, you just do you, and it's all good. I don't think anyone can really be offended by your interpretation of a dragon and Kitty's interpretation in the story that she's telling that's being interpreted by Claremont. So it's all good. So they decide they're going to get going. And this is where I mentioned before, it reminds me of the Never-Ending Story. Like, you get these characters that meet each other, and they eventually have to get, they all ride on a big thing. And he speaks. So in my head, when I hear him speak, I think of the dog dragon thing. What was that thing called?
Falcor, the luck dragon,
The luck dragon.
who has the best roar. Hold on tight. That's what he does.
Crazy. So we get a quick cutaway from their little narrative as Wolverine is coming back from, let's just say, the shower. And he's having
Kitty's hitting the, you have to save us, Bastion. You must save us.
Right. Or maybe he's on his way to the shower or whatever. He's got a towel and his hair isn't wet yet. So I'm guessing he's just going on his way to the shower, and he's having a smoke. And Nightcrawler's like, hey, buddy, stay here. You got to hear this. It's really fun. So they do that. Good. So now she's got a bigger audience than just Illyana and Peter. And then they like, isn't that not a panel right out of Never-Ending Story? That whole page.
It is 100%. It's a kind of an odd, I don't know, it's kind of a boring flying through the air panel, though. It's very Jet-esque as opposed to having the dynamism of a dragon.
Yeah, it is boring, but that is what I expect from Cockrum. Even his like landing, all of it, I don't find it interesting at all to look at.
The legs are sort of hilarious.
Yeah.
Just put them right out. Yep.
Yeah, they look like someone drew them after, like a kid drew them, kind of.
A little bit.
Like Trogdor the Burninator with a big beefy arm sticking out. I wish we could mention Trogdor the Burninator sometime, like every episode somehow, but it's not always easy to fit him in. Yeah, like those limbs do not look anatomically anything like anything else like connected to this dragon. It's brutal. Just that drawing's a piece of shit. Anyway, so they go land, and yeah, Madcap is having a rest, gonna catch some Z's, and they're gonna explore. And there's this really weird little thing that there's a little like fairy in the corner, a little pixie that says "big things." And I don't know if you have a voice for a Bamf, but
it doesn't feel like it's the same. I mean, he does speak some German, so, but it doesn't feel like the same voices as Nightcrawler. But still, I don't know. Maybe I'll try to ferry up a Nightcrawler. Hush, Peony, they'll heal you. They're leaving the girl alone. Great.
So Peony is, of course, the last name of the two creators of ElfQuest.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. And then Kitty's having a nap. It'd be really, really, really weird if like there was a dream sequence while she's having a nap. Like, what does
That'd be pretty great.
Claremont think Kitty Pryde is telling Illyana about the kitty in the story having a dream? Like, keep going. That's Inception. Let's keep going deep
Just
into
get
this.
deeper and deeper.
And she wakes up. What the heck are you?
I'm a Banff, and you're a girl. Want to make beautiful music together, Liebchen?
I'm no girl. I'm a pirate, and I'm dreaming. This is too ridiculous to be real.
Humph, pretty smart talk from a lady who rides a dragon.
Hey,
Banff. Ach, I don't know whether to die of embarrassment or strangle Kitty.
grin and bear it, bub. I think she pegged you just right. In this issue, Kitty pegs Nightcrawler. Totally different audience if I make that the title of the episode.
Yeah.
And in walk Aurora and Carol Danvers wearing a Captain Marvel like Shazam shirt.
Yeah. It's
Isn't this
real funny.
This
is
weird.
something completely different for sure.
Yeah, so she's like that. That's such a good joke to put her in that shirt, especially now that she, of course, is Captain Marvel. Yeah, that is very bizarre. David says Cockrum should have used consummate V's for those dragon legs. Do you remember Trogdor the Burninator? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do.
And the consummate V's, anyway, it's part of his drawing instruction. Yeah, it's a pretty good wink from the guys. I guess it probably was Cockrum who did that. It's wild. That panel, out of context, is hilarious. The pegging one. Yes, it's there's a lot of good things happening in that panel. I see you, Cockrum. Yeah. Phew, what a stink. Where'd you go, fella? And why'd you come back?
Oh, we can teleport. It's easy and fun. I come back because I'm in love with you.
It's so weird. Sigh. Yikes.
Girl, there, mine. I saw her first. Tough.
I love that idea. Like that there are these multiple pile up of little bamfs. I think it's tons of fun.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this is an inspiration
like Smurfs.
for and the X Babies. Do you know about the X Babies?
Yes.
So I feel like this is a bit of a precursor, and they are more iconic, not necessarily like in design or anything like that, but I think they mean more to the readership of X-Men as a legacy. The X Babies play the Art Adams version of the X Babies have a greater legacy than the Banff does in terms of their footprint. But I think the Banff is the proto X Baby. Because it's,
and speaking of consummate V's, check out his
the consummate V's of his costume. That's a good point. You make a good point. That's funny.
Beat it, bozos!
Gee, he's cute. He's mad.
I don't know who says that. Probably one of the other Bamfs, I guess.
Or maybe Kitty.
Because
with the next panel, she's like, thank you, Bamf, for saving me from your basic fate worse than death.
Anytime, gorgeous. Do I get the kiss as a reward?
Colossus, where are you when I really need you? I do not want to kiss this little guy. Yeah.
At that moment, he was a few miles down the beach, enjoying the solitude and silence of the island. It has a couple of lines before. I wonder if there is a message inside. Oh, better yet, a genie. By the white wolf!
Yeah, and Storm comes out. Free! Gods of the earth and air! Thy daughter whom the evil one imprisoned is held no longer. I am Wind Rider. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
I mean, quite a costume though. Was that ever like an alt costume for a Storm?
Well, it is now. And in classic Marvel tradition, the very fact that we're aware of this reality through this story means that this reality exists. So it's out there somewhere. Yeah. But it is pretty bizarre. And she gives some background on like the other side of Jean Grey. Like they were being dearest friends, roommates. And so then she gets to tell Peter all that stuff. Dark Phoenix. So yeah, lead on, Noble Paladin. I shall follow.
Yeah, I like
You
that
get all the
line.
silliness happening. And then the Tasmanian Devil shows up.
Yes.
And I don't get it. Like it feels like these designs are incongruous. Like they don't go together at all. But I guess
Yeah.
in that sense, it all works as a mishmash.
Maybe, I mean, this is maybe Kitty is like probably watches cartoons, or at
Right.
least isn't too far off from the age of watching cartoons.
Right. Well, you watch cartoons.
I do.
Kurt is really seeing his predatory nature laid bare. Yeah, but I've never thought, or I've never interpreted any of Kurt's behavior in the comic as predatory towards Kitty. It's always been like welcoming. But again, that could be, this is how she sees it, right? She sees him as being a horn dog. Jason says, one of many realities of the X-verse, right beside Earth X babies. Oh my, Earth X babies? That's like the Alex Ross Earth X? They're babies? I'm terrified. So, yeah, he shows up, and he's a little furry, huh? And he has Coors, I guess, Coors Light cans,
Yeah.
and a cowboy hat.
And he's mean.
He's mean. You want to quickly do that maze? And done. Okay.
And there's no exit.
And I'm trapped inside forever. And this feels like it's right out of, like Mad Magazine or the like Marvel version of it. What was it called? Like not Brand Ech? I can't remember what Mojoverse reference. Yeah. Is Mojoverse called Earth X? Because I remember there being like an Alex Ross Earth X project. Not the same thing, same thing? I don't know. Anthony says, minus maybe the Cyclops and Professor X, Professor Fu Man, Xavier. I kind of want figures of these versions of the X team, especially the Tasmanian Wolverine. Yeah, the Banff, I'm all over. Like that one, I want, and the Tasmanian Wolverine would be also like a funny plush in some form, but he's also ugly and funny at the same time. Yeah, I do not want the wizard at all. I come a long way, a hard way. Diggins, hot and thirsty work. And he pops off a beer and slips it into his mouth, chomps it, and that's
Tweet.
spits it out. Yep. The fun for the letter to just play with these sound effects. And here we go again. Nightcrawler says it. You got to read this line.
Kitty may have pegged me, my friend, but she skewered you.
Oh, that doesn't hold up well. What's the matter, Elf? Jealous that I got skewered while you only got pegged? And like the next person's going to say like, oh, Kitty really split me in half. It's terrible. It's terrible. Professor, Scotty, join the party. We wouldn't miss it for the world, Carol. It's been too long since these halls have heard the sound of laughter. So glad he said laughter. Oh, could have been terrible. So they eventually convince Wolverine to join the group after putting him in his place. And then they all hop on Lockheed to continue. Unless there's something there you think we need to cover.
No, that's good. That's a good. I kind of like Colossus with the bandolier.
Oh, yeah.
That looks kind of nice.
It is cool. A little bit of asymmetry once in a while can go a long way. I also do like the colorist doing their part telling the story, because in that last panel we are clearly in a different place, right? We don't see these reds and oranges until we're up in the sky again. So it's like a way of using color to aid in the clarity of the storytelling, which is good. Also foreshadows that they're about to deal with the big threat here.
Think fast, child. Something that the Dark Phoenix would definitely say.
As she throws a ball at their head. Who said that? The sun. All of you, look at the sun. Don't take that advice.
Your moment of truth is at hand. Help! Can any power ever hope to rival hers or stop her?
Perhaps not, Colossus, but we must at least try.
Oof, I hope she's friendly. Hope springs eternal, little one, especially in the most hopeless of situations.
Genie, how?
How brave you all appear. A pity I can see past that facade, to sense the terror in your hearts, but do not despair. That soul-shriveling, mind-numbing fear will be as fleeting as your lives.
I like that.
I'm adding in a sound effect.
Please do. There definitely will be something from her.
Not dead. I am impressed. I suspect, Xavier, that this is your doing. Consider it your swan song.
My mystic mind shields held against her initial attack, but I fear they and we will not survive a second.
In that case, wizard, let us take the fight to her.
Wind Rider, remember that within the soul of the demon lies the true self of one we cherish. Jean is not responsible for her actions as Dark Phoenix. We must spare her if we can.
So that seems like a commentary.
Oh, yes. Absolutely, it does. And it's, like this opportunity for Claremont to retcon and to gaslight us maybe a little bit into what he wished we remembered from that issue. Yeah, pretty silly stuff in that way. Jason says, no, just playing around with the Spider-Verse idea, but with X-Men. Oh, that's super cool. Yeah, more of that. I think you should pitch that if you haven't already. One thing at a time, my friend, we stop her first. Cool.
Suddenly, Katya, I feel very small and quite useless. We are witnessing the battle of gods.
They're our friends, Colossus, and we gave our word. There has to be something we can do to help.
I like that they're our friends. We met them a couple of days ago, at most.
If even, yeah. David says, she's being controlled by the demon Shooter Jim. Lockheed moving close and zap Phoenix with a shot of dragon flame. Oh, I've got to advance. Sorry. Thank you.
You're daft, Colleen. All that'll do is make her mad at me.
Keep this up, Buster. You'll make me mad at you.
I can live with that, darling.
Relax, kiddo. I think I can give this overgrown lizard all the incentive he needs to do his duty.
Huh? Oh no, friend. Or oh no, fiend. Don't. And they're those amazing limbs. Yeah, burninate. Those limbs, man. This just brutal. Everyone falls off the back. You dummy. He hates that. Oh, because he's been poked in the back in the past with adamantium claws. And so there's a precedence for this.
I will say this. I love the swirl of like Wolverine's claws, his arm getting plunged in. The swirl is kind of awesomely cartoonish.
Yes, as if he wound up in a Popeye sort of fashion. That is fun. Kitty and the others, they're falling, but I can easily save them.
I love that. There's a huge problem, but I can easily solve it. The genie spell enveloped Kitty and her compatriots.
Is it her that says what's happening? I think
that's Kitty.
Oh, okay. Yes, with the wings, right. So she's... What's happening? I feel funny.
With somewhat extraordinary results. Wings. We have wings. Mine are metal and yours, Katya.
Stink. What kind of wings are these for Pirate Kitty, Scourge of the Seven Seas? Yuck.
I love them.
That figures.
I love that she's telling the story and gave herself the crappy wings that she doesn't like.
That's true. And I love how Xavier's new rug chair is like his animated series hover chair with a propeller on the back. It looks really, really natural. This chair is magnificent. Not only can I fly, but it magically enables me to... Well, that's Cyclops, pardon me.
Oh, yeah, that is Cyclops.
I just assumed...
How did he get a chair?
I
assumed too.
Yeah.
It would have made more sense.
Not only can I fly, but it magically enables me to see through the blindfold that contains my accursed eyes of death. Not too shabby, Highness. We came here to do a job, troops. And now that we've got the means to do it, what are we waiting for?
Charge!
And Wolverine's got these, bat wings, which is odd.
Hold it, Fuzzball. He and me have a real score to settle.
The dragon. Hey, fella. No hard feelings, right? I was just doing my bit for the cause, Ow.
Me too, midget. Happy landing. Who dares?
Who else, babe?
Oh, yeah. Pardon me. I have to advance that. Oh, cool.
Hostess Twinkies, yep. Fiend, you've tempted fate for the last time.
Talk is cheap, Star Mama.
You cannot hold me. You could as soon try to contain a star.
That is true, but a star belongs in the heavens. The rightful home of the Phoenix is the entire cosmos, not only the fleshy casement of a young woman.
Fleshly.
You've done enough. In the name of mercy, in the name of Lady Jean, be free. Be gone.
Propelled by the wizard's and the genie's will, sustained by the prince's love, a lance of blinding energy speared into the heart of their foe. The woman disappeared, transformed into its true self, a huge, majestic firebird, and battling it, the soul self of the woman it had possessed. The combatants, indeed the entire world, watched in awe and terror as the force that was as old as time, as primal as existence itself, battled a power that would not be denied. Jean had fought this battle once and lost, and innocent lives had paid the price. Given a second chance, she does not fail.
Beloved, my eyes. When the Phoenix left you, the curse on them was lifted. My lady, Jean, are you...
alive? I just keep doing the same voice.
That's great because that's her real voice. That's so funny.
Alive, lion of my heart. Oh, and very, very well. Lockheed flew our heroes, even Fiend, once Kitty talked him into it, back to the prince's land where the lovers were married and they all lived happily ever after. Oh, she is asleep.
Yeah, my story must have really wowed her. Come on, let's tiptoe out of here. What did you think of it?
Truskatzen.
I wonder what the order of this is. You know what I mean? This is like bad storytelling in terms of what are you supposed to read after she says, what do you think of it? Does she say Nightcrawler no? Or
I think it's because it's looped down underneath. It's sure Nightcrawler. Like she's trying to talk to Peter.
Right.
And then opens the door. I was like, what did you think of it, Peter? But then
Nightcrawler, oh no. And then he's like, truth, and she's like, sure, Nightcrawler.
So, and that one's coming out of Professor X's mouth, but then Cyclops finishes the thought. That's weird.
Well, maybe Xavier pushes the thought into his head. To be honest, Kitty, we thought it was great, especially the ending. Thank you. Do you want to read the...
There are myriad dimensions, an infinite number of alternate realities. Somewhere, somehow, Scott knows the lovers did indeed live happily ever after, and for that he is content. Next, Reunion with the Starjammers.
That's so bonkers.
Truly
Yeah.
wild.
Yes,
Yeah,
it
those
is.
last couple panels are kind of like, oh, we got to shoehorn that ending in here.
Yeah, just get it done. Get out of the story. Like they just hold up that orb, cast a spell, separate Phoenix from Jean Grey, and move on.
It's sort of funny how long that moment takes in the panels, of Jean getting free of the Phoenix Force, and then to have those last panels feel like they kind of got crammed in.
Yeah.
You could have, I don't know, it feels like they could have laid it out slightly differently, but I'm not a layout artist, so I don't know.
Yeah, but you are not a layout artist. That is true, but it is a good criticism, right? Because the ending of the adventure is fine. It's it's just like they didn't really solve the problem in any kind of interesting way. Like Kitty's not a great storyteller, and that she didn't create a great story. She just rambled until the little kid fell asleep, which I've done many times. Um, and then from a Claremont and Cockrum point of view, like having just the last two panels of the entire issue sum up, or two and a half, um, just end up finish all the threads. Like, okay, yeah, she's asleep. We walk out. Oh, they were all there. You know, uh, it's fine. It's serviceable. But yeah, if you were to redo this 40 years later, yeah, probably would do it differently.
There is an emotion to, if you've read all of the comics leading up to this point, especially the Dark Phoenix saga, the moment of Scott, saying something to Kitty about it at the end is like, well, there's some emotion there because he
There should
spent the
be.
time giving us the momentum of those characters.
Yeah. I mean, to me, maybe the last panel, I guess it's so lighthearted you don't want to end on something too heavy, but in the emotional weight of hearing what could have been is
Mhm.
like he goes back to his room and picks up the globe, the
Yeah,
snow globe, and just looks into it and has a breath, like that's the ending of it. Can't remember if you're a Next Generation fan, but it's Picard going back into his cabin, opening up the case and playing the flute, so the
yeah,
little pipe song as the episode called The Inner Light ends. And then we pan out of the ship and it's cold and quiet. um but that just wasn't what was going to happen here. I think if this was going to be redone, so I don't know if you remember, but in the first batch of 20 or 30 issues of classic X-Men, Claremont would make changes to those issues and have contemporary artists 10 years after this, make those additions or subtractions from these comics. So I feel like that could have been, they would have like tweaked this ending and had that more momentous thing, especially that he knows at this point Jean does come back. So when he writes this one in 82, or writes it in 81, published for 82, he doesn't know that they're going to bring her back. But when 10 years later, she's already back. So I wonder how it would be reframed. But yeah, just a weird one-off issue. If you were the kid who picked this comic up from the newsstand and never read X-Men before, and like, what do you think this book is about? Like, I have
yeah.
no idea what's going to happen next issue. It's insane. Except I do know Starjammers.
Right.
Do
Reunion with
you
the Starjammers.
do you have any love for the Starjammers?
I don't really know them. No,
I think you do.
they're. I think in part because as I said, I'm a Spider-Man guy, so they're not really. They don't really interact with Spider-Man
No,
in
they
any
do
way, shape, or
not.
form.
But
So
they are uh, archetypal space pirates.
yeah,
You ever see the movie Ice Pirates?
I did.
So they are, Han Solo and Chewbacca, and they are Guardians of the Galaxy, like Peter Quill and his group. They match all those kind of archetypes, and plus they have the baggage of being Scott's. The main character, Corsair, is Scott's dad, which they established earlier in the series. And a lot of these youngins here, like Jason and David, they love them Starjammers for reasons, and you know, like they're like part of whenever the X-Men go cosmic, the Starjammers are gonna like ragtag their way onto those missions. So
Yeah.
it's tons of fun. Yeah.
I was gonna say I grew up. My parents owned a video store when I was growing up, and so Ice Pirates. I was reminded of Delta Force. I watched the movie Delta Force, which features. I didn't realize this because I watched a nice YouTube video about Delta Force and how it got made. The main guy in Delta Force is the mayor from Spin City.
Right. Right. In his like earlier iteration, but Spin City's got
Yeah.
like the best head of gray hair ever.
Yes.
Yeah. In what did you watch about Delta Force?
It was essentially a how did it get made kind of
But it
YouTube
wasn't
video.
How Did This Get Made? The
No,
podcast?
not that, not the podcast. No, but it was
Because they do
it,
that movie as well.
it was like written. I was directed by a former stuntman,
Yeah.
and that's why like it's really focused on the stunts, and the
Yes.
cinematography is actually pretty interesting, pretty decent. But yeah, the story of it, the plot of it is like bonkers.
Yes. It's
Plot
like
holes you could drive a Delta Force through.
Anthony says, I think it would be fun to see an issue like this from each of the X-Men, getting their own takes on their teammates told through different genres. For sure. For sure.
I'd love to see Wolverine tell like a detective noir story of, all of them as noir characters, and he's the private
Brian
eye.
Boswick. Yeah,
Brian
that would
Boswick,
be.
yeah.
At the same time, I wonder what it would take to get him to indulge in telling a story. Like he seems like the kind of guy who'd be like, "I left, killed some guys, and I came back. What do you want to know?" Like he doesn't really
Yeah,
want to elaborate, you know. David says, "I grew up not liking them because the idea that Scott's dad is a space pirate was just a step too far for me. For whatever reason, I love them now. Well, they're campy and they're also like comic bonkers fun. So there's a lot to love. Plus Corsair's mustache. I mean, that's like one of the greatest
hell
things
yeah.
ever in comics.
I do think when you're a kid and you're reading these things, you do invest a bit more seriousness in them,
Oh yeah,
and you also don't necessarily have the love of all the different aspects of different genres that you accumulate through experience.
right.
So like something like Star Wars, when you first see it as a kid, you just like you're drawn into the adventure of it, and you don't really see the campiness and the silliness until
It's
as an adult you see
what are you
like,
talking
oh,
about?
there's some bonkers and stuff going on here, and some references to things that are like hilarious and campy and fun,
For
and then you
sure.
can start to appreciate things on those different levels.
Yeah, and like you're saying with not getting all the genre stuff, like I didn't know Kurosawa. I knew any Kurosawa when I was a kid. Star Wars was my introduction to Kurosawa. Like
Yeah,
that was the lens through which I still see. And westerns. I didn't really see any westerns, so that was Star Wars was sort of my first intro to that as well. Um, yeah, interesting. Canon film. Yeah, I think it was a Canon film.
it was. Yeah, I used to know like all of those companies just from the as soon as you saw some part of a logo come in, I could tell you what, oh, that's Vestron or whatever. Yeah, there's a
Those,
number, like a lot of, you want to say indie type studios, but they were like essentially branches of major studios making
right.
low budget films. That it was almost the Bloomhouse model of let's make a bunch of crappy low cost movies and see if one of them will make, 6 to 10 times its budget.
Yeah.
Oh, there's the Fiend with no name.
Yes. This is Wolverine as represented in Starjammers crossover in X-Men 275 and issues around that. The Starjammers are there. I find it fun, like that there are these boundaries that we impose on things like X-Men, where it's like, oh, that's too far, or like, oh, that's too much for Batman. Like, I don't want to see Jack Kirby's The Demon, crossover in Batman. Like, there shouldn't be the occult. At least, like, some people might say that. I'm not saying I agree. But like, I don't mind him stopping a cult that believes they're gonna raise a demon, but he can't actually go through the portal and go to a demon's realm and like go to hell and like interact. Like, that's too far for Batman for some people, or Batman in space. It doesn't seem to make sense for some people. So I find it kind of fun that the X-Men have that too, where I just want to see them. Maybe one might say that they just want to see the X-Men dealing with more terrestrial problems and not
Right.
cosmic. My boundary with most comic books is when things become cosmic on the scale of reality altering. I just find it sort of, you just get to do it. It feels like all of it is just the writer's whim, and there are no more rules anymore. And for every spell you can concoct, there's a spell to undo. So there are no stakes because anything can happen. There was this issue that I loved as a younger guy. It was an X-Men annual where they fight a person who's going to kill them all. Like, he's superior to them, and X-Men need to get to this crystal in his palace, and they all get murdered and like totally destroyed and cut down while they're trying to get to this crystal. And Wolverine is the last one, and he's almost there, and he gets impaled, and he's dead. And a drop of his blood like goes and gets to the crystal, and then he reforms completely from his blood touching like this reality altering crystal. And I was like, I loved the fact that it was just pushing Wolverine to his limit. Like, I'm into that.
Yeah.
But I didn't love the fact that, if we can he can be reborn and then wish. Like, okay. So it feels, it takes all the stakes away for me. I like, when things are a little bit more grounded. But I never had any issue with the Starjammers. They were kind of goofy. But Goofy's good sometimes. I don't mind Goofy or Pluto. Anthony says, give Wolverine a couple of Molson Canadians and he will weave a yarn for the ages. Perhaps he needs to get really drunk and then he'll talk. But in my head, he sobers up so quick that, he starts talking and then... But I imagine he would tell a story if he needed to. Like, if we're about to go on a mission and we're in the Blackbird and we're crossing the globe and we've got 30 minutes. And he's like, why are we going to go kill this guy? Like, why are we going to go do this? And he's like, all right, sit down. I got to tell you about this guy. And he's like, and he has some shame in it. So like, he doesn't, it's painful for him to talk about, maybe he was in love and his girl got killed and he's got to, like, we gotta cut this guy down. We got to do this thing. And he tells you the story. I'm into that. That'd be kind of cool. But I wonder if he would ever like weave a tale that was fiction.
Right.
Or had elements of it. Like, it seems almost too playful for a guy that's seen what he's seen. But I'm sure there are versions of Wolverine that are more lighthearted. I just started reading, as Jason and David have recommended, and many others. I've just started reading House of X. And there's a scene in it where an opening scene, so I'm not spoiling any content, in one of the first issues, I think, where Wolverine is like cuddling some kids. Like, there are some students of the X school that have like, hey, there's Wolverine sitting in a dewy meadow. Let's wrestle him. And he's like, kid, like, I'm like, Wolverine should cut that kid. Like, get off of me. You wouldn't be like wrestling with some kids in a meadow. He knows that anyone he opens his heart to is going to die, and he has to live it. So he doesn't want to love anybody because it just means pain. There you go. Speaking of pain, I've had enough of you. It is, we've been going for a while here.
It's true. This is one to watch at 2 times speed.
I tried. I agree with you. At least on 1.5 at the most. But I really do appreciate you coming on here and chatting X-Men with me. This is not an easy issue to get through. It's a challenging one. And
it was fun.
I appreciate the hangout, and I enjoyed. You made it much more fun for me, but this is not an issue I'm going to go back to anytime soon. I think in my grand journey through Claremont's X-Men, this is not one I want to reread.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you hanging out with me and helping me get through it. Yeah, it's good to see you again, 2 nights in a row, buddy.
Yeah. Good to see you too.
Good to see you. Thank you. And likes and follows and all that kind of stuff. Where would you like people to go to hear some of your music?
Music is at theyoungnovelists.com. I was telling you earlier that I actually just I'm going to be playing drums for somebody tomorrow at the Cameron House. It's like a last minute thing where I just got asked to play some drums for someone, and so 6 to 8 tomorrow at the Cameron House if you want to hear me play drums for somebody.
You're
Her
a
name
great drummer
is
to listen to.
Meredith Lazowski. I've never met her before. I've never heard the songs, so you're gonna see a drummer learning songs on the spot.
That's amazing to do. I've watched
It's
you
a fun
do that
job.
many times. Yeah, definitely. Front room or back room?
Front room. It's a residency.
Have you been
thing.
back to the Cameron House since things reopened?
No, I actually haven't.
No, we did was it once a month for a while, or was it every Monday? I don't remember.
It was a residency, so it was every week for a month that we played
did
there. Yeah,
from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m.
he did.
Oh,
Nonstop, which the bartender was like, "Why the hell don't you guys take a break?"
Yeah,
and
we did
we were like, "We
4-hour
don't really like
sets.
to." Yeah.
I don't know if I'd want to do that anymore, but that was a lot of fun. It was a good memory. Yeah, 4-hour sets over a month in like winter. Yeah, it was that was crazy.
It was
Crazy
fun.
time.
And it's a good area to be finishing a show like at 2 a.m. because you can still go out and get something to eat.
Yes, although we didn't always, because half the restaurants were still kind of closed. At least the ones I always wanted to go to.
Yeah.
But good luck at that. And
Thank you.
you're a good dude. I don't know what else. I have only nice things
You
to
too,
say
man.
about you. There you go. So anyone still watching, please check out our comics over at groupofsevencomics.ca. And of course, it's the number 7. And there you can find our original trade paperback, which is just about sold out. We only have honestly less than a box left. So these things are going to be gone this year, which is a great feeling, by the way. And you can pick up
awesome.
the rest of the series. That's issues 1 through 6. You can pick up 7 and 8, and a couple of one-shot adventures featuring the Peregrines also at our web store there. And you can follow at Jason Lapidus Art or at Group of 7 Comics or our good buddy Chris Sanigan, the writer of Group of 7, who is on a cruise right now, that lucky duck.
What?
So I hope he's enjoying that, as I know I would be. So anyway, thank you all for hanging out with us tonight, and it's been a ton of fun. Thanks for everyone in the chat. I hope you enjoyed your evening, and I'm glad you were all here. So everyone have a wonderful week, and that's it for us. So my closing words are just X-Men. There you go.
Take care all.
Cheers.